Well, hello, everyone. My name is Scott Morris. I'm the Director of Business Development for GTS Distribution. We're here with another one of our retailer webinars. If you are here live, thank you so much for joining us. If you are here watching on YouTube previously recorded, feel free to be especially awesome and give us a thumbs up. Go ahead, like the video, subscribe so you can get new notifications around all the new webinars coming out. Today, I am joined by a good friend of mine, Tim Korkluski, who is from Cryptozoic Entertainment, who I'm sure most everybody here has heard of in one form or another. Cryptozoic has been around for a very long time, dabbles in a little bit of everything, and makes a lot of awesome stuff. We're going to be talking about several things happening right now, several things happening in the future. I don't want to steal too much of the thunder. If you were here before the pregame show, Tim did mention about how his voice kind of sounds a little Batman-like. We will be talking about some Batman stuff, which of course is one of my favorite things in life. So that's all really good too. As always, if you are here live, by all means, as I always joke, everything is on the table. You're allowed to ask any question you'd like. All you have to do is hover over your window and there's a little chat bubble at the bottom. You can either send a message to all the panelists, which are myself and Tim, or you can send a message to everyone. The other retailers can see your question as well. Tim, you're welcome to hang out in there and check things out, but more than anything, worry about your presentation. I'll cover that, and if questions pop up, I'll make sure to work them into conversation on everything.
Sure thing.
But with that, thank you for taking the time to join us. Retailers, thank you for taking the time to join us as always, whether you're here live or whether you're watching. It's still your time, and we appreciate it. So, Tim, the floor is yours, my friend. Fire it up and tell us about all the good stuff you got.
Excellent, excellent. So yeah, I just got a little bit of a presentation today, obviously with the world still kind of recovering from COVID and everything else. A lot of what I'm going to talk about today is what we've done so far in 2021 and some projects, unfortunately, that were supposed to be 2021 that did get rolled into 2022, along with some other stuff that we've got going on. So it's going to be a little bit of everything today, just to kind of show what we're working on as a company, what we've got upcoming, what you can expect coming out very soon. And yeah, if you have any questions along the way, feel free to stop me. I'll try to breeze through the presentation, present everything, and then any questions everybody has after the fact, I can always answer them at that point. Scott, if you don't mind, just because I'm kind of looking at the presentation off to the side, if someone asks a question, if you could just prompt me, just to kind of let me know, that'd be perfect. Totally. Excellent. So we're going to actually start off with our tabletop games. And as soon as it wants to scroll here, give me just a moment. Boom, here we go. All right, so the first game that kind of came out April 2021 of this year, so it was a little bit later than the Wonder Woman 1984 release, was actually our Wonder Woman 84 card game. So this was initially designed to be a very family-friendly, get younger single-digit age children into gaming for the first time ever. So the mechanics in this game are not going to be as deep as some of our deck builders. For those of you that are familiar with our deck builders, it's pretty much you're going to be fighting against different villains from the movie, and you got different actions. You got block, lasso, sprint, and punch, and certain villains will take a certain amount of combination cards to take down. And you want to save as many civilians as possible. So even though you're all kind of playing together, it is all about who can save as many civilians as possible, and the player that saves the most civilians wins. So it's a very accessible, very easy game for people to get into. At a $20 price point, you really can't go wrong with it. Believe it or not, Gen Con just this last weekend was the first time that we get a chance to sit down with people publicly and play the game and show them what it was the first time since its launch. So we had a lot of people that were very interested in after the fact. They liked the accessibility of it, and they liked the fact that it was definitely geared towards the younger kids in order to create that gap between younger kids getting into family game nights and using this as a springboard to kind of get them used to playing other games. So it's actually been a pretty decent success for us.
Yeah, ironically, I just saw this for the first time out in the wild this weekend. One of my local stores, Tabletop Games and Hobbies here in Kansas City, had it, and they had a demo copy on their shelf. So I pulled it off and sat down and played through it with my friend, and he immediately said to me, he goes, "This thing is great. This should be in everybody's backpack." I was like, yeah, it's small enough to fit in. It's easy enough to teach. It's like, it's really surprisingly very, very concise, which is awesome.
Yeah, it only takes about 1.5 to 2 minutes to teach people how to play this game. And then once they figure it out, they're like, oh, okay. And they just take off.
Yep. And it looks cool. It's got that whole kind of, Wonder Woman vibe from the 84 movie and everything. And you got the actual like graphics and Gal Gadot and everything, which is cool.
Yes, very, very much so. So luckily we were able to yank a lot of artwork from the movies. For those of you that aren't aware of our brand, we do a lot of IP style board games, trading cards, collectibles, and things of that nature. We actually have a very close working relationship with Warner Brothers. So that is why we're able to do some of the stuff that we do. And kind of moving on, actually, this is street dated for tomorrow, the 28th of September, for those of you that are watching it in the future. We actually have 3 games coming out at the same time from the mind of Stephen Rhodes. So we've got them all based upon his t-shirt lines and his artwork, for those of you that are familiar with them. The first 3 games we're doing are Let's Summon Demons, Let's Dig for Treasure, and Don't Talk to Strangers. Each of these are coming out exact same time, so you can actually buy them all 3 at once at the register. They're $20 each. And we actually got a chance to show those off for the first time at Gen Con this last weekend. And a lot of people really loved them. So just kind of breaking down the different games here, it shows the 3 games. So with Let's Dig for Treasure, it's very much a push your luck experience. So it's all about digging for treasure, which, if you're familiar with Stephen Rhodes' artwork, means that you're not just digging anywhere, you're digging in a graveyard. So you are digging up graves looking for treasure. And there's 3 different dig stacks that you can go digging through. And the whole idea is push your luck, and you dig until something stops you from digging. That will be how many points that you get for the round, and that will carry over to your overall score at the end of the game. So it's very tongue-in-cheek. There's, obviously there's a lot of chance behind the game as well. It's a push your luck game, so there's going to be a lot of chance. But there are certain strategies that you can start to employ as you start digging up certain cards to be like, okay, these actually score for me now compared to being detrimental. And then, of course, game 2 is Let's Summon Demons. So out of the 3 games we have out, this one's actually in a slightly thicker box with the punch board in it and the dice and everything else. The box needed to be slightly thicker. So the actual demon cards that you see there are thick punch board, almost about the size of coasters.
Oh, wow.
So they're it takes a little bit extra meat in the box in order to make it all fit. So this one is all about building sadistic synergies, as it says here, with the rotten kids, sharing the love of the sweet kids, and only the savviest and luckiest player summons the best demons. So the more powerful demons you summon at the end of the game is how many points you have. And there's a lot of synergies that work off of the rotten kids you work with, and which ones you sacrifice, which ones you don't, pushing your luck to see if you actually keep the demon in your favor or irritate it and either goes to somebody else or it starts trying to destroy you and eat you as its sacrifice. So again, very tongue-in-cheek game. Resource management is kind of the name of the game in this one, obviously packed up in a very twisted package. So there you go. And then game 3, which has some of the artwork when we were showing it off in the office. Some of the artwork in this game was probably some of the only artwork I've ever had where I've literally fallen out of my chair laughing so hard because it's so ridiculous. So in Don't Talk to Strangers, you are trying to get home from school as everybody in the city is being abducted by aliens. So you try to play your cards as efficiently as you can to jump from house to house in order to try to get home. And along the way, there's going to be different things that happen that will mess with your play style or maybe add experiences to the play style. But the whole idea is to try to get home as quickly as possible with your different schoolmates to make certain that you're not abducted by aliens. So the best way for me to put this one, it's like a combination of Candyland and Chutes and Ladders with some Monopoly with alien abduction. There we go.
That's a heck of a smorgasbord. So I did want to let everybody know. So these games have become way more popular in the last 2-3 weeks of being seen out in public for the first time. We're down to whenever we pre-order a new game, we always order a percentage over what our pre-orders are for managing restocks in that first 30 days. We're already at a point of having less than 10 to 15% left of our initial stock of these already because of the spike in the last week and a half, 2 weeks. So if you do have any demand for these and you haven't gotten them on order yet, please do let us know because we're going to restock them from Cryptozoic. I love the 70s. This might be a choose your own adventure. It might be an after school special. It might be something that's crazy. It's all over the place. So the
educational,
really, right. Exactly. Yeah. It's all very cool. Like, honestly, I could see something like Let's Summon Demons. I could see that being on the table in like Stranger Things 4, right? And the kids are
Yeah.
playing it, like, it just like fits so well. So yeah, but there has been a pretty big spike on that. Julio asked the question. So Julio is one of our retailers who's in Central America, and this is something we haven't talked about before, Tim, but it's a good question just to ask. Right now, most of the stuff what we have from Cryptozoic is US based only because of IPs or restrictions and things like that. If Julio is in Central America, specifically in like Guatemala, is that something that he needs to reach out to you guys directly on? Is that something he can buy from us, or what's the best way for him to obtain the games from you guys?
He can actually buy it directly from you guys. There's nothing stopping you from getting any of these games.
Great. Awesome. I will make sure to set that up because we have restrictions by country just to make sure we're managing IPs correctly and everything, but I'll make a note of that and make sure we get that set up. So Julio, when you contact your rep, that'll be nice and easy and ready to go for you.
Try to make this as smooth for everybody as possible. And I noticed there's a couple other questions up in the chat. Do we want to take a minute and
the only other things were really just people saying, hey, how are you? And everyone's doing good on that. So
all right, perfect.
Julio made the mention of he loved the Cerberus engine, and I concur with that.
Well, I got some good stuff for you coming up then.
That's right.
All right. So obviously, this is the big game that we were mentioning this year. So we've got two different versions of the Dark Knight Returns. This is we have the standard base game and the deluxe version. The only difference between the two, aside from the box cover, is the deluxe version comes with miniatures. The base game does not. There is no separate upgrade. So if you buy the base game, that's what you get. The deluxe version is the base game with the miniatures. This is our first massive solo play experience. There's also a 1v1 option in it as well. But this actually gives you a chance to play through one of the most iconic Batman comics that has ever come out of all time. So for those of you that are not familiar with the story of The Dark Knight Returns, it happens quite a few years after Batman officially retires, right? So he actually comes back after Gotham City goes through a couple of different things. I don't want to give away too much. And he comes out of retirement to don the bat suit again. And at this point, he's in his mid-50s. Superman's working for the government. Joker snaps out of a coma, comes forth in order to talk to the people again. And there's also this gang of people called the Mutants that are running amok throughout the city. So Batman dons the cape and cowl again, goes back out in the city to fight. Very similar to Frank Miller's style. It is very dirty and kind of grimy and in your face. So where, yes, you're playing Batman, you don't start with all of your gadgets right off the bat. When you start off the game, you actually get dealt hands of cards that are special abilities and maneuvers and things like that that you can do while mitigating stress throughout the city. So for example, when you first start off in book one, you're actually fighting against the mutant gang, right? So, and eventually you're trying to fight the mutant gang leader and take him down. So part of that is that the mutant gang is running throughout the city, and they might be destroying whole districts or blocks or things like that. The police are trying to stop him. But at this point, the press is spinning it to where Batman is this unwanted vigilante. So if the press spins too much, then the police will actually start fighting back against you instead of being a tool that you can use. So you're always kind of walking this razor's edge as to what you do. One of the cool features about the game, I mentioned that there's book one. For those of you that are familiar with the comic book, there were actually 4 books to the whole series, and you will actually play through all 4 books. The cool thing that we did is we actually have a dossier that's included within the box that when you're done with session 1, be it win, lose, or I just have to pick up for now, you actually tuck all of the stuff into a folder in the dossier that allows you to pick up where you left off if you need to pick it up off your kitchen table or coffee table, wherever you're playing, and play again later. Or if you're moving on to book 2, you successfully get through book 1, but there's sections of Gotham that have burnt to the ground. That's all going to stick for your book 2 when you move on to the next chapter. So what you do in books 1 will affect books 2, will affect books 3, will affect books 4. So you have to think about, it's not just stop the immediate threats where they are. Sometimes that is the case, but you also need to think ahead about what is it going to take for me to be successful when I'm fighting the next villain, right? So we've spent a lot of time on this game making certain that, yes, this is a solo play experience. Yes, it's based on a comic book, we all know. However, every playthrough is going to have its own risks and challenges and trials and tribulations. So no two gameplay experiences are ever the same.
So a couple of quick questions for you that came up there in the chat. First question came up about demos, which I know you guys are not part of our formalized demo program, but if somebody
Correct.
wanted to get demos of like the Steven Rhodes games or even the Batman game, whether it's demo purpose or display purpose, what's the best way for them to go about that?
You can contact us directly. My email is tim.korkleski@cryptozoic.com.
Okay.
Or Scott, yes, that was actually one of the things I want to talk to you about, is getting the demo program set up through you guys.
Okay.
So that way, if they want to, toss that demo copy in with whatever they're ordering, they can absolutely do so.
Okay, easily done. We can talk about that after
we'll
this.
Get that. Yeah.
Just so everybody knows, I mean, I think most retailers have engaged with our demo program at one point or another. Essentially what we do is if a partner is in the demo program, you can buy one copy per calendar year per storefront at 25% of SRP. We work with the partners on the back end, make sure accounting and all that's taken care of and everything, but that'll help you guys in terms of like having things on display or having things to demo. The Steven Rhodes games would be great for demos.
Yeah.
The Batman one may be a little big for demo space just because of the size of the game, but from a display perspective, look really, really good. I really, it's funny the way you were describing, if you're not familiar, the concept of not being familiar to the Dark Knight comic book from Frank Miller to me is kind of like not understanding what water is, but that's just my world because that's the way I live. It's funny to me. Another question. I'm not sure, Manuel, if you can maybe rephrase this. You said, can we order these to come with the pre-order? I'm presuming that meant, can you order demos to come with the pre-orders? So if that was what you meant, right now, as Tim mentioned, not in the formal program, but we can work through that and get that
absolutely
probably this week pretty easily. Worst case scenario, I did put Tim's email into the chat for everybody, so you can see that there. And then Manuel had another question. This is really good, and I know you're going to get into this too. Why are there two games for this? Why doesn't the base game come with the figures? So I know the answer to that, but I'm not going to steal that from you. And then Derek asked a question. Can a person adapt this on their own to multiplayer?
So so if you play the one-on-one, so I'll answer that one first. It's a little bit easier. So if you look at the one-on-one rules, there are going to be a couple different ways that you can adapt it into multiplayer. It might take a little bit of working on your point to do it. We were, believe it or not, at one point going to make it a multiplayer experience, but what we found through all of the play test groups that we ran through, everybody wanted to be Batman, right? So it is, as much as we wanted to make it like a 4-player multiplayer game or something like that, it did not jive with what everybody overwhelmingly wanted. So we decided to lean in heavily on the idea that like this is a premium solo player experience with the ability for a 1v1 play where somebody's essentially playing the main villains in book 2 against you. But there are going to be different things that you could definitely adapt within there in order to create a multiplayer style game. Such as, for example, like GCPD, there could be a couple things that you could pull out of there and probably tweak the rules a little bit in order to make it more of a 3-player GCPD, trying to take care of things and stop Batman and to deal with the villains. So there's lots of different ways that you can work within it to make it happen. But ultimately, it is designed specifically as a solo play experience with 1v1 expansion to allow somebody to play the opposition. If that, hopefully that kind of helps answer that.
Yeah. And then the other question was around the 2 different versions. Why?
Yeah. So we were initially just going to say, you know what, to heck with it. It is $110 game with miniatures. Obviously, I know a lot of people are like, well, that sounds pricey. Well, yes, but we're working with high-end sculptors in order to make certain that these look exactly like Frank Miller's vision. Like they had to go through Frank Miller for approvals and all these other things. What we found along the way is that there was a lot of people that are like, look, I want the gameplay experience. I don't necessarily care about miniatures. What can we do in order to make it a little bit more accessible? Because for some people, $110 price tag is a little bit of a steep price tag, where some people just wanted the gameplay experience and they did not care if it was cardboard standees on little plastic, standee inserts. So we decided to do both, where there's the standard game and the deluxe edition. Deluxe just meaning it comes with a different style of box and miniatures. Same gameplay experience. Nothing changes outside of that. It's just, do you want really cool Batman miniatures? Do you not really care?
And it's probably good to note the miniatures are only available with the deluxe edition. It's
Correct.
not selling those as a separate pack or anything like that.
Correct. It is not an expansion on its own.
And ironically, that fits a lot of what we hear from publishers. You know, we interact with a lot of publishers that are Kickstarter darlings, and, you know, hey, my game did great and I want to, you know, get into distribution and stuff like that. But we talk a lot about analytics and metrics and things like that. And it is pretty interesting to talk to these publishers that make really like obscenely big games with obscenely large amounts of miniatures, and hear them talk about the actual percentages of people that actually buy all in on everything versus the people that just buy the base game and maybe one expansion or something like that. So there is always going to be that market, I think, of people who will look at this and go, oh my God, I love Batman. Oh my God, I love the Dark Knight. I'm going to shell out $300 or whatever, you know, price you put on it or anything like that. But then there's also going to be a good amount of people that are in the opposite side of that boat, which is, well, yeah, I love it. Yeah, I think everything's great, but I don't really want all that. I just kind of want the experience of playing the game and the base game and everything. So I think it's actually, from a product perspective, I think it's a really good idea. So Derek says the game sounds great, but I'm anticipating a lot of customers' hesitance at that $64.99 price point. Do you have some quote explanations we can use to try and bring these customers around? That's a great question. Like, what would,
so that's actually why I pulled up this screen right here. So there's over 200 game cards. The board is massive. It's I can't even fit in camera. Like it's probably about 18 inches by 12 and a half, 13, something like that. I forget the exact dimensions. I'll have to look that up. So don't quote me on that completely. But there's over 160 tokens, 21 standee bases, a dry erase marker to keep track of things on the board. There's engraved Batarang dice. So as Batman, when you're using your equipment, you actually have dice. And I don't know if you can see my mouse moving on screen, but you see these right here. We're only showing a few. But the idea of it is that these Batarang dice actually have almost the curves on them like you're tossing Batarang. So it kind of, again, it's that experience of throwing Batarangs to stop the enemies. There's enemy dice, there's police dice. I mentioned the 4 different rule books. Each one has its separate setups. There's over 200 game cards. Again, like there's so much that we jammed into the box in order to really give the experience of playing as Batman, right? Like,
yeah. And to me, this is for the fans of this comic, right? This is if I'm a casual superhero fan, this may not necessarily appeal to me. If I am that comic book kid, if I am the Dark Knight, you know, big Jim fan, I mean, this is just going to go right down the road for me. So I think I think hopefully, and Derek, you're welcome to chime in on everything here. I think for the people that are going to be in love with this game, I don't think you're going to have to sell to them at all. I think the people that want this game are going to want this game like immediately. I do think that there are some people that are going to be on that mid fence so that you could, you know, easily sell into it. I think ironically, to me, you know, because you guys have stayed so true to the source material, that's one of the biggest selling points, right? Is that, hey, this is not a game that we just slapped Frank Miller's stuff onto and it looks like the comic book that you may know. This is transporting you into that world and actually like playing in that grittiness. I mean, to me, that was the biggest success of The Dark Knight, was it humanized him and it made you realize it's not easy being a hero. There are challenges involved with all this from an emotional perspective, from a physical perspective. So I think that's really good. Julio says, how is the replayability? I know the answer to that because I've play tested this game, but again, I'll let you take that one.
Yeah. So, and Scott, I'm totally on board with you talking about your experiences with it too, just to hear it not from the guy from Cryptozoic as well.
Sure.
But the replayability, there's a massive factor for that there, right? Yeah. So every time you start the game, again, starting completely over from scratch, or you get your butt kicked and have to start over anyway in book one, it's going to have a totally different feel and setup every time. There's going to be some core things that it starts with, right? But that doesn't always necessarily mean that you get the same starting equipment. Doesn't always necessarily mean that like your positioning is going to be in an ideal position to deal with, like, you know, for example, book one, the mutant gang and hunting down the gang leader or any of the things of that nature, right? So like every time you play, there's going to be new challenges that are thrown at you. Now, I'm going to say that the combinations are limitless. No, everything's got a limit, but like at the same time, there's thousands of combinations of different things that can happen throughout this, and how you deal with, again, part of it is how you deal with it is going to carry over into the later books as to what you're able to do to manage it. So Scott, if you want to talk a little bit about your experiences with it.
Yeah, actually
fan of
the very first game I played, I got my butt kicked, which is no surprise. But the second thing I did, because of the way the setup was and the variability was, I went and said, okay, what happens if I just change my equipment? What happens if I keep everything the same? Everything starts the exact same way, except I change the equipment that I start with. And it was a completely different playthrough. I still got my butt kicked, but I lasted a lot longer and it was a much different experience. But that alone right there told me, I was like, okay, if I can get this much variability just from how I start the game as Batman, there's a lot of variability with the different player powers, different gang members, all those different things. I mean, I remember when I first heard you guys making the game, and I was talking to Daryl Andrews, the designer, I remember when he was showing me the component list, I went, what the hell do you need 160 tokens for? Like, that's crazy, right? And he's like, no, follow me on this. And like, he started talking about all the different things you use them for and all the things it works. And I was like, normally I'd be scared that would be a little too fiddly, but this works. Like, this makes so much, like, you could take even, and I haven't tried this, but I'm pretty sure it would probably happen. You could start with exactly the same equipment, exactly the same setup, and still have a variable gameplay just based on the decisions you make and the timing of when you make them.
Right.
So that piece of it I thought was really good. I mean, everyone that knows me here and watches these series of videos, I can be pretty skeptical on games. I can be, I am not a believer that, 1,000 games a year is a good thing. I think less is more. And I'm a big believer in that strategy. And, when I look at things, especially as a solo player, when I look at what I want from a solo game, I don't want to just sit down and roll a die and write a number and just get a score. Like I want to feel like I'm reading a book, or I want to feel like I'm watching a movie. I want to be transported to something that makes me feel like I'm in a different world and have that narrative. Now that's just me. There's other people who are totally cool with sitting down and brief, 10, 15 minute gameplays on solo stuff. But for me, especially in the pandemic, I think having a much bigger narrative and much bigger option game where you have all these variabilities, I think that's phenomenal. And then, it just kind of is icing on the cake that it happens to be like the greatest graphic novel, maybe tied with Watchmen, but the greatest graphic novel ever. So,
right. Yeah. So, I mean, ultimately, to kind of answer the question as to why the steep price tag, we leaned heavily into the experience. And with that, I mean, there was more layers, more design, more tokens, more componentry, all that adds up. Right. And so that's ultimately where it came down to. It wasn't a matter of us just going, it's Batman, so people will pay $65. No, there's obviously, like everything in the industry, it's half math, half voodoo. So we kind of used a little bit of that in order to get to where we were at. So like the prices are matched according to componentry and, level of detail that went into the game.
Right.
Hopefully that answers the question.
I think so, but if not, let us know in chat.
Yeah.
Sure.
And then moving on down. So for those of you that have been playing a lot of our DC deck builders and are familiar with the Cerberus engine, we have had a ton of crossover expansions and things like that. And they've done either really well for people or not at all. So one of the things that we kind of found from people is they didn't like carrying small $10 booster packs in their shops for these games. And we wanted to start giving a little bit more of a complete experience to the smaller expansions that we were doing for the DC deck builders. So we're actually putting together our crossover collections. So these are our initial crossover packs that we did with the oversized character cards being done in foil. Each new box will have a new promo card. new rules of play and things of that nature. So the first one that we're actually doing, it'll be available Q1 2022. We're hoping March, April, somewhere around there. Again, as much as I want to be a little bit more on the nose about that, it's really hard right now with manufacturing and logistics being what it is globally, but we're pushing for that right now. What you're looking at is the first box that we're doing, which is crossover pack 5, 6, and 7, which we went to our fans and said they really want to see those done as a crossover pack first. So that is the Rogues pack, Birds of Prey, and New Gods. And it's all 3 expansions with the new rules, foil oversized character cards, Black Racer promo card for $30.
This is a great idea. And I'll tell you why I think it's a great idea. DC deck building game is one of the games we try to keep stocked in as much as possible in Washington, Missouri, and Florida. It's one of the longest standing deck building games on the market. And ironically, transparently, I will admit this, I didn't like the game when I first played it. The first playthrough, I sat there and I'm like, wait a minute, why am I Batman using Wonder Woman's lasso? This is driving me bonkers. And then I started playing the game more and I was like, holy crow, this is a great game. Right? Like it was, you had to kind of like, break that mentality in your head. But yeah, I've loved this game for a long time. But here's the reason that I think this is smart. Today, these packs exist as individual packs that are very small, and it can get to a situation, and I've seen this a lot. I've gotten a lot of feedback from this on retailers where it's nice to have things that are like $10 and $15. But the reality is when it comes to fanboys of a specific brand, especially something like this, DC, generally the people that buy DC deck building game, they buy it all. They
Yes.
don't pick and choose and say, oh, well, I don't think I want New Gods. I'll just take Birds of Prey. I'll take Rogues. I mean, that's why you guys made a multiverse box, right? Just because people have 40 expansions to the game and they get it all and everything. Julio just said, this is my first deck building game and we still love it. That's awesome. Yeah.
Yes.
But I think this is great from a retail perspective because there can run into situations where you want to be able to stock everything, but maybe on an individual basis, maybe the Rogues and the Birds of Prey sell better for you in your store, but the New Gods really didn't sell that really good for you in your store, or whatever combination of that you want. I think that there's a lot of opportunities for smaller, low-cost packs to actually cause problems for inventory for retailers. And I think having them in this bigger $30 box as all in one not only gives the retailers an easier product to sell, but I think it gives the fans an easier product to buy because they feel like, hey, I'm getting more for my dollar than if I had just bought these back in the day when they were each separate and everything. So I think this is a really smart idea.
Correct. And of course, we are doing that with all of them, including our Crisis expansion packs.
Oh,
so
cool.
We have 4 Crisis packs. They're $20 each. They're going to be combined to make $40 packs, but it's going to have a lot of that same treatment. New additional rules. The Crisis are still going to keep the hardcore mode. For those of you that are not familiar with it, the Crisis packs are designed to really up the difficulty for every single person playing, to the point to where some people I've actually had people tell me, like, in a very lovingly and frustratingly gritted teeth way at the same time, it's like Dark Souls for DC deck builder.
It's called Crisis. It's not called Hugs, right?
Yeah, it's not high fives and unicorn hugs by any stretch of the imagination.
Derek just asked a question, but I think it's actually kind of answered on here. He had asked, for the players that already have these expansions, are the foil character cards and the promo cards the only new stuff? And obviously you have on here that you have the additional gameplay modes as well, which is going to be a nice big thing. But also said, will you release any new expansions in this format? And if so, how far down the road is that?
Right. So we have actually talked quite a bit about this internally. So everything that you see up here on the screen right now is expansions that we have out, right? So right now, as far as crossovers, they're up to number 8. Obviously, by doing 3 packs, the math doesn't make sense on that. But on the final one, we actually have our DC Bombshells that we were working on as a crossover expansion that will be in that pack. So that will create essentially 9 expansions and 3 of these crossover collections. And then the Crisis expansions will go Crisis 1 and 2, and then Crisis 3 and 4, and will become their own mega packs as well. In the future, and we've already talked about this internally, with all of our smaller expansions, from a game design perspective, I'm not going to sit here and say that they're easy to make. Like that's not the case at all, right? But like you have your core concepts, and it's like great. You can build it up and then basically finish a project and sit on it until you get the next one done, and sit on it until you get the next one done. Sit on it. And the idea of it is that we want to actually release most of the existing product in this format by this next year, and I'll show you why in a moment. But the idea of it is that we actually want to have what we have existing done in crossover collections for this next year, period. And then anything past that, we're planning on having one crossover collection per year or per year and a half, kind of depending on how development falls in on that, right? So there's no exact science to it, as much as I want to say yes, one per year. It might be like every year, year and a half, depending upon what we're developing and what we're working on for new core games, things of that nature, just like most other companies out there.
And I'm pretty sure most people would be very excited to just have Batman Ninja available again. So
that too.
Yeah. So, in its own pack, in a combo pack, whatever. Like, just, yeah, I know a lot of people have been asking for that.
Yes, very much so. So that was actually a sleeper hit for us. That actually came out right before COVID hit, and we were sitting on a bunch, and then everybody wanted it all at once. So I went from like, oh yeah, I'm only selling a couple of these a month, to like literally people could not get enough of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So first world problems, I guess, is the best way for me.
I was going to say, it's a good problem to have.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. It just threw all like projections way off.
Right.
Oh, it is what it is. And then moving on down, we are our next Rivals. So for those of you that are not familiar, the Rivals is a 1v1 version of our deck builders. So they usually come in smaller sets, $24.99, the Flash versus the Reverse Flash. So this is actually going to have a lot of a newer stuff in it. And it's actually going to almost encourage you in a lot of ways to play faster. You can't make a Flash game without having something that's going to make you want to play faster.
So that's okay.
So, you know, we're going to have each character has 3 unique character cards, each of them with different abilities, higher costs than the previous ones. So where a lot of the other DC deck builders, you're building up your power costs to defeat villains. In this one, you're also building up your power to like rank up your hero to the next level to give them new abilities. Mm-hmm. So, you know, and again, with the idea of the Rivals is that, you know, if Scott and I are playing, this is not like, oh, well, we'll see who gets the most points. That's still part of it, but I'm actively doing things that messes with him. Right. And that will actually knock his abilities out of the game. So to quote a couple of people I've talked to in the past when it comes down to deck builders, and what sometimes people don't like about deck builders is they feel like they're playing solitaire in a group of people.
Yeah.
Right. Because it's all about your deck, your management, your hand, what you're building, grabbing cards next. Right. So they kind of have this idea that it's like, I'm playing solitaire with other people, where the Rivals series, and in that case, Confrontations, for those of you that have not picked up Confrontations in stores, is DC deck building where it's actively going against the other players. You're actively trying to knock out the players in order to stop their abilities from kicking in and things of that nature. So, you know, this is our third in the series. So we had Batman versus the Joker, which we're about to get a reprint going on that. And then we've got Green Lantern versus Sinestro was our second one. And then Rivals 3 Flash versus Reverse Flash will be the third one in that series.
Yeah, these are great. These are, again, low price point things, easy to carry around.
Yeah, 25 bucks, fits in your backpack, very easy.
My son and I, back in the day when we used to go to conventions, my son and I would bring Batman versus Joker and have that with us in our backpack just for, you know, kind of filler things in between when we were taking a break and sitting down to have lunch or anything like that. So it was great.
Yeah.
That's a good image right there. That's a good looking image of Superman.
So yes, and then obviously our next core deck builder that we have coming out is DC deck building Injustice. So this definitely allows for those of you that are not familiar with this storyline, they did it in video game format. They did it in animated format. They're also doing it in comic book format. To not give too much away, but kind of the general overall premise. Joker kind of causes Batman to kill Lois Lane in Metropolis along with thousands of other people, and he finds out their unborn baby, and it breaks I'm sorry, not Batman, Superman. It breaks Superman.
Yeah. So
Superman finally has enough, kills the Joker in front of Batman, and the Justice League splits. So there's basically they become two different factions. And so they end up fighting against each other over who is right in this, right? So Wonder Woman ends up going with Superman, and they basically form what's called like the regime, which is basically like they are the authoritarian government. What they say goes as law. And it's one of those things where Superman kind of finally embraces that teetering godhood he's always had in the comic books and says, who's going to stop me? Right. So he really embraces that. Well, Batman, who at this point is injured and basically living in like his own suit, like he's got a new armored bat suit that's basically keeping him mobile because Superman beats the crap out of him, is leading the resistance against the regime in order to get things back to where they were. So they're trying to take out the regime and get them back to where they were. But a lot of this game as well is going to have some of those mechanics where you're actively fighting against the other players. So it's not just about scoring. It's also about like, are you resistance? Are you regime? And what I do can affect other members of the resistance. And if I can actively go against the regime, we'll actually score more points by doing so. So it's going to have a lot more like teamwork and versus mechanics that happen in this one compared to a lot of the other deck builders, where again, it's still, if you're familiar with the Cerberus engine as it is, that core is still there, but with the new rules, there's going to be lots of cool new things you can do within it.
Right.
And that is going to be our next big DC deck building game. That's actually going to be out Q3 of next year.
And if anyone's not familiar, Injustice is also a huge video game.
Yes.
Absolutely gigantic video game for DC. Actually, I think someone told me it just got put on Microsoft Game Pass, the first Injustice, not Injustice 2. But Injustice 2 is out now too. And that's something that's really, really, really big right now. So this has some big crossover potential. I always kind of laugh when I hear someone explain the story of Injustice to me, because it reminds me a little bit of the NWO storyline from WCW, which if anyone understands that reference, you and I need to talk offline, but it's basically the Wolfpack versus NWO. So it's kind of funny. So.
Yeah, very much so. So we're super excited to bring this one out to you. And of course, we have lots of other DC deck builder stuff planned that I just cannot mention right now.
Right.
Moving on, another one of our deck builders. So for those of you that are familiar with the Epic Spell Wars series, we have Epic Spell Wars 1 through 5, which are standalones, or they can be combined with the other sets to have their own unique gameplay experience, are much more of a party game. ANNIHILAGEDDON is an actual deck builder where it's all about like gaining more power for your wizard. So it uses our Cerberus engine and does a lot of different things in a lot of zany, wonky ways. The spells are very much over the top. I do not recommend any of this series for children ever. So just FYI for those listening, this is definitely made for more older teenagers and people that have weird senses of humor. Very like classic early 2000s Adult Swim vibes, if you're familiar with like Super Jail and some of the cartoons that came out of that time. So that's very much what Epic Spell Wars is. So we have the second one coming out, which is Q2 2022. We're hoping April, May, somewhere within there. Again, production is going to kind of determine where that falls in. But the idea of it is that you are playing your own wizard and you're battling against the other people, trying to gain new spells, new synergies for your spells and things along those lines. So new wizards, new spells, new creatures, new treasures. And then there's different, we now have coming into the game what's called mayhems. And there's also dead wizard tokens. So for those of you that are not familiar with the whole idea behind Epic Spell Wars, you are killing the other wizards in the most gruesome ways possible. The thing of it is, though, because they're in a tournament, they keep coming back. However, their bodies are still there. So you can actually use the dead wizards and pile them up in front of people to create shields, or make it harder for people to maneuver through the dead wizards to get to you, or so different things of that. Very weird, messed up things that can be done within there.
I think it's unbelievably opportunistic timing that you've got the cover. It kind of has a little bit of a Skeletor vibe to it.
It does.
And He-Man's becoming much more popular now with the Netflix series and everything. So that's kind of comical.
That may or may not have been planned.
I'm sure. Yes.
So yeah, this one where, again, for those of you that are familiar with it, it's very Adult Swim, tongue-in-cheek feel. And this one, of course, you also have like extreme nacho chips that you're gathering that act as power points that you can expend in order to cause your spells to go off higher and things like that, as well as wading through dead wizards. And sometimes you use your own corpse as a shield. So lots of cool stuff with that. If you have not picked up ANNIHILAGEDDON 1, it's actually coming back into our warehouse this week. Scott, I know you guys do have some restocks for that coming out soon. Those should be going out hopefully this week, early next week, again, kind of falling within that weird logistics scheduling. And if you haven't picked that one up yet, I definitely recommend it to anybody who likes deck builders in their stores and likes watching people playing some weird games. ANNIHILAGEDDON is probably one of my favorites, just because of the fact that I've also got a weird sense of humor. And then moving on, for those of you that are familiar with our games may not know that we also do high premium trading cards, like ridiculously upper premium trading cards. So the set that we have coming out December of this year, and it's been a little bit, and a lot of this is because of COVID, production, getting in touch with talent, getting in touch with Warner Brothers, is our CZX Crisis on Infinite Earths set. So this is all based on the Crisis on Infinite Earths crossovers that happen on the shows between Superman, Black Lightning, Supergirl, Legends of Tomorrow, The Flash, Arrow, and everything that happened within there. So for those of you that are not familiar, CZX is a super high-end premium brand. Hence the reason why you see an SRP of $198. The cards that are in those box, we offer autograph cards, wardrobe cards, hand-drawn sketch cards by lots of talented artists. And we also do like lots of gold deco foil or silver deco foil, depending upon the sets. One of the things I want to touch on is that our autograph cards, we do not send an actor a piece of paper, they sign it, mail it back to us, we take it and lithograph it on the cards. No, we send them the actual cards with verifiable proof of them sitting there, signing the card with a Sharpie. And then that gets sent back to us, bundled into the packs, and go out. So the wardrobe cards will actually list on there. So when we say wardrobe cards, they're actually cards that have a piece of the wardrobe from that specific episode, from this actor, and it talks about it on the card where it came from, that come in these packs. And the secondary market on these are ridiculous. We sell out almost immediately all the time, and typically GTS takes the lion's share. So we are very, very well known for our pop culture trading cards as well, because of the fact that we do very high-end things with them. So our set coming out December 2021 is based on Crisis on Infinite Earths. We are almost sold out into distribution on these packs. So if you need to get a hold of any cases or boxes, I would recommend getting in your pre-orders on them now. So moving on, we've got the next one that's actually coming out Q1 2022. I don't have exact dates on it yet. Probably February, March timeframe, right on that cusp. We are actually doing Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit trilogies as a CZX Middle Earth set. So this one is also going to have a lot of autographs, sketch cards, and other cool things that we're not quite talking about yet that we're going to be throwing into these sets. So these are all going to be based on the Peter Jackson's adaptations of the Tolkien masterpieces. And we've been working with a lot of the talent to get cards signed and back to us, as well as a lot of other really cool stuff that we're working on behind the scenes. It's unfortunately not going to be ready until February, March of next year. So those are our two big sets coming out. And then we're also talking with some other companies for some other sets as well. Some also super high premium, some middling ground based upon what the customer base is like. And I can't quite talk about those yet, but you're going to see a lot more coming from us now that movie studios are opening back up a little bit more and getting back out there to be able to start working with their licensees again. And that pretty much covers everything that I've got for my presentation today. So yes, we got a lot of stuff. They got shifted into next year, most of it due to manufacturing and logistics issues, but we're coming out strong swinging.
Happening like that? I haven't noticed any.
Yeah, that's
yeah. I just had another conversation with UPS this morning. So seems yes. Like everybody is. I don't know of anyone not dealing with logistics issues. I'll just leave it at that. So right. No, that's awesome, man. I really appreciate you covering everything. I think we had a lot of really good questions on this. Derek asked, what's the ETA on the Batman solo player game?
We should be seeing that in retail by January. We were actually, believe it or not, Derek, hoping to get that out to be a Black Friday sale. It just, we had everything done on our side to make it happen. Unfortunately, manufacturing and production just could not do it.
It's sitting in the bay in Los Angeles, isn't it?
No, it is. Oh, I wish.
Yeah.
I wish.
I just saw an article last week that someone had taken a picture of the Bay of Los Angeles from 10,000 feet after taking off from LAX, and it was just polka dots of ships everywhere. It was something ridiculous. Like 75 ships or something like that. It was just crazy. So yeah, there's quite a bit, and I've mentioned it a few times on these webinars already. I think this is going to be one of the most profitable and one of the most challenging Q4s for everybody, whether you're a publisher, whether you're a retailer or distributor. I think availability is obviously king all the time, but now it's going to be even like higher than what it normally is. And I think there's probably going to be more December releases this year than there's ever been before, just because of things slipping. But I also think that that's going to bleed into Q1. And I think that the success we see in Q4 will bleed into Q1, and we'll see just as much success in Q1. So I think we're about to enter a really, really strong time. It will be a challenging time. It'll be a lot of, keeping the plates spinning on the wheels kind of thing, or on the poles kind of thing, but we'll have to see where that goes. Manuel asked, what's the difference between the Batman Deluxe and Deluxe Edition? So it's actually there's the Batman Deluxe, and then there's the base game.
So, correct.
Yeah, there's not two different deluxes. There's just the deluxe that comes with the additional miniatures, and then the base game, which does not come with the miniatures. So that's really the primary driver between those two.
Correct. And then, different box.
Yeah, right. Yeah, definitely. And then Tim, you and I can talk about on the backside, we can talk about getting you guys into the demo program so we can get that set up for everybody. Retailers, if you're here, we actually have an attendance of everyone that joins. I'll make sure once we get that done, I'll shoot everybody a note and just let you know that we've got that set up and is ready to go. So Derek said, I agree. I just wonder if customers will be willing to slide into Q1. Yeah, it's a good question, Derek. I could probably spend an entire webinar just talking about that and what we hear from multiple people and talking to people. I probably talk on any given day, I'll talk to about 3 to 4 retailers a day, all over the place. And it's really interesting to see. I talked to a retailer last week who literally rented out the extra space next to him in his strip mall that was empty just for warehouse space. He is stocking up so much and moving through things so fast. And he said it's everything. It's not like he can point his finger at one thing and say, this is what it is. It's just there's such a high turnover now, which is really, really good. Manuel says on the GTS website, there's 3 different games for the pre-order for Batman. I will take a look at that. There should only be 2 unless something is messed up on that. So I will take a look at that and make sure to fix that. Let me just do a quick search while we are here and see what comes up. Well, it might be because I'm logged in as I'm logged in as a power user on my back end, so I'm seeing things that retailers may not see. I'll take a look into that, Manuel, but I appreciate you letting me know.
We'll get it cleaned up.
If there's this, okay, I already can tell what the problem is by seeing that CZX SKU that you just put on there. So I'll get that cleaned up before the end of the day, without a doubt. So I know there was a point where we had them in the system, then we changed them in the system, and then we finally publicly announced them in the system. So there might be a holdover or an artifact from that, but we'll get that fixed. But thank you for pointing it out. I appreciate it. So awesome. Well, we said we were going to take 20 minutes. We took an hour. It's okay. When things
we had the questions along the way
to talk about, but I really appreciate all the questions from the retailers. I love having these be a discussive type thing. Retailers, again, thank you so much. Just as a reminder, we do record these. We put them on YouTube. So if you missed anything, it'll be on YouTube later today or tomorrow, depending on the upload gods and how nice they are to us and everything. But Tim, I'll make sure to send you a copy of that so you've got it as well. Again, Tim, thank you very much. Really appreciate you taking the time and looking forward to a lot of these awesome things coming out really soon. So with that, I will bid you all adieu. Have a great week in your stores, and thanks so much. Take care.
All right. Thank you, everybody.